Most people imagine prisons as places that restrict movement. Locked doors, concrete walls, visible barriers. But some of the most powerful prisons feel nothing like that. In fact, they feel comfortable. That's the assumption almost everyone gets wrong. We tend to believe that if life feels good, stable, and secure, then we must be moving in the right direction. But comfort has a strange psychological ability. It rarely announces itself as a limitation. It disguises itself as success. Look closely at human behavior and you begin to notice something curious. People rarely get trapped by what hurts them. They get trapped by what works. A career becomes reliable. A routine becomes familiar. A social circle becomes predictable. Every day feels manageable. Nothing is visibly wrong. And that's exactly why the cage remains invisible. The most effective prison is the one that feels like freedom. The strange part is that human beings are highly adaptable creatures. We can adapt to difficulty, but we can also adapt to comfort. What once felt exciting gradually becomes normal. The promotion that once kept you awake with anticipation eventually becomes another line on a business card. The neighborhood you dreamed of living in becomes the place you barely notice while driving home. Comfort doesn't stop moving. It becomes the new baseline. And once that baseline forms, another psychological process quietly begins to take over. Past success starts changing how people see the future. You can hear it in ordinary conversations. I've already proven myself. I worked hard to get here. I don't need to take those kinds of risks anymore. At first, these statements sound reasonable, except reality behaves differently. Many achievements provide rewards far beyond money or status. They provide psychological closure. They create a feeling of arrival. The brain begins treating previous victories as evidence that growth can slow down. This is the hidden effect of success. The achievement remains in the past, but the identity built around it continues operating in the present. The memory of winning can become stronger than the desire to improve. Ironically, the people who once embraced uncertainty often become the most protective of certainty. They stop experimenting. They stop exploring unfamiliar opportunities. They become caretakers of a version of themselves they created years earlier. But this creates another problem. The human mind loves predictability far more than most people realize. Think about daily behavior. The same coffee order, the same driving route, the same opinions repeated inside the same conversations. Predictability reduces cognitive effort. It conserves energy. It creates a sense of control in a world that often feels chaotic. That sounds intelligent until you look closer, because the brain frequently mistakes familiarity for safety. Not actual safety, familiarity. People stay in jobs they dislike because they know what tomorrow will look like. They remain inside stagnant relationships because uncertainty feels more threatening than dissatisfaction. They repeat habits that no longer serve them because repetition feels calmer than change. And over time, predictability stops being a preference. It becomes an addiction. What feels safe today can quietly become limiting tomorrow. The paradox is almost invisible while it's happening. Life becomes easier to manage but harder to expand. And eventually, that psychological preference evolves into something deeper. Identity. At this stage, people are no longer simply avoiding risk. They become risk avoiders. Notice the difference. A behavior has transformed into a self-concept. Suddenly, the person who once says, "I don't want to do that," begins saying, "I'm just not that kind of person." The language changes. The boundaries become personal. Risk is no longer evaluated. it is rejected automatically. The entrepreneur becomes the manager, the explorer becomes the protector, the curious student becomes the expert who already has answers. And the most fascinating part is that this transformation usually feels mature, responsible, even wise. But here's the strange part. Many people are not protecting themselves from failure. They are protecting themselves from the emotional discomfort of becoming a beginner again. Because growth almost always requires temporary incompetence. It requires uncertainty. It requires looking less impressive than you looked yesterday, which leads to a final reversal. Most people think stagnation is the opposite of movement. It isn't. Stagnation often looks exactly like movement. The meetings continue, the routines continue, the achievements continue, the calendar stays full, the life remains busy. But psychologically, nothing is expanding. And that changes everything, because the real comfort prison is not a place where people stop moving. It is a place where people become so skilled at protecting what they have built that they gradually lose the ability to become someone new. If comfort builds the invisible cage, attention decides whether you ever notice the bars. Most people believe their attention belongs to them. They assume distraction is a personal weakness, a simple failure of discipline. If they lose focus, they blame themselves. If they waste time scrolling, they promise to try harder tomorrow. But that assumption hides something much bigger. Your attention is no longer merely a mental resource. It has become an economic asset. And whenever something becomes valuable, competition begins. Every morning, before many people even leave bed, dozens of systems are already competing for access to their awareness. News alerts, messages, social updates, videos, emails, recommendations. None of them appear particularly threatening on their own. That is precisely why they are effective. The greatest theft is often the one that feels voluntary. Think about how often attention changes direction during an ordinary day. A notification appears, a conversation pauses, a thought disappears, a task remains unfinished. The interruption lasts only seconds. Yet something important happens beneath awareness. Every distraction creates a tiny redirection of mental energy. The mind leaves one path and begins constructing another. Then it must rebuild the original path again. Most people notice the interruption. Few notice the reconstruction cost. And once attention becomes easy to redirect, another behavioral pattern starts emerging almost automatically. The brain begins expecting interruption. You can see it everywhere. Someone hears a vibration that never happened. Someone checks a phone during a 10-second elevator ride. Someone reaches for a screen immediately after a conversation ends. The behavior feels spontaneous, except reality behaves differently. Human beings learn through reinforcement. When an action repeatedly produces novelty, information, social connection, or reward, the brain starts anticipating the outcome before it arrives. Eventually, the anticipation itself becomes rewarding. The notification is no longer the event. The possibility of the notification becomes the event. The expectation of reward can become stronger than the reward itself. This is why many people unlock their phones without a clear reason. They are not responding to information. They are responding to anticipation. A small uncertainty appears. Maybe someone replied. Maybe something happened. Maybe there is something new. The brain learns that uncertainty can be resolved instantly. And once that lesson is repeated thousands of times, patience starts feeling unnatural. But this conditioning creates another psychological consequence. The appetite for information grows faster than satisfaction. Imagine eating a meal that never arrives. Every bite creates more hunger than fullness. That sounds impossible. Yet the modern information environment operates in a surprisingly similar way. Scroll, refresh, swipe, repeat. Every piece of content promises closure. The next video, the next post, the next headline, the next revelation. But here's the strange part. The brain evolved to pursue valuable information in environments where information was scarce. When something was new, it often mattered. It could improve survival, social standing, or future decisions. Today, the scarcity is gone. The seeking mechanism remains. As a result, the mind keeps chasing completion inside systems designed without an ending. The feed never ends because your curiosity never receives a final answer. A person opens an app intending to spend 3 minutes. 40 minutes disappear, not because the content was extraordinarily meaningful, because there was never a natural stopping point. And when the brain spends enough time inside endless streams of stimulation, another hidden effect begins to surface. Attention itself starts changing shape. Most people think multitasking makes them efficient. The evidence of daily life seems convincing. Answer the message, check the email, return to the document, watch the update, continue the conversation. Everything appears productive. But this creates a psychological illusion. The brain is not performing multiple complex tasks simultaneously. It is rapidly switching between them. And every switch carries a cost. Tiny fragments of previous tasks remain active. Unfinished thoughts linger in the background. Mental residue accumulates throughout the day. A person may physically leave one activity while psychologically remaining attached to it. Part of the mind stays behind. Then another switch happens, and another, and another. Soon attention begins resembling shattered glass rather than a focused beam. The mind rarely breaks all at once. It fragments one interruption at a time. The consequence is subtle. People become busier while feeling less accomplished. They consume more information while retaining less understanding. They communicate more frequently while struggling to think deeply. And perhaps the most surprising part is that many never recognize what was lost. Because the disappearance of focus is rarely dramatic, it does not feel like a collapse. It feels like normal life. Which may be the most important insight of all. The greatest danger to attention is not distraction itself. It is adaptation, because once the mind adapts to constant interruption, endless stimulation, and perpetual switching, fragmentation no longer feels abnormal. It feels like consciousness. And when that happens, people do not merely lose control of their attention. They lose the ability to remember what an undivided mind actually feels like. Once attention becomes fragmented, another pattern quietly takes control. Not distraction, delay. Most people think procrastination is a problem of time management. They imagine it as laziness, poor discipline, or a lack of motivation. They assume the solution is simple. Become more organized, work harder, stop making excuses. But that explanation leaves out something important. Procrastination rarely begins as a scheduling problem. It begins as a psychological escape, because when people postpone something meaningful, they are often postponing a feeling, not a task. And the first feeling they postpone is usually hidden inside a deceptively simple thought. I'll start tomorrow. At first, that sounds harmless. In fact, it sounds responsible. Tomorrow feels cleaner, more organized, less stressful. Tomorrow appears to contain more energy, more focus, and somehow a better version of yourself. But here's the strange part. Tomorrow is one of the most convincing illusions the human mind ever creates. Think about it. People imagine tomorrow as if it belongs to a different person. A person who wakes up earlier, thinks more clearly, resists distractions, makes better decisions, yet when tomorrow arrives, it becomes today. And today feels exactly like yesterday. The future is often where the mind stores responsibilities it doesn't want to face in the present. The paradox is fascinating. People are not actually delaying action. They are borrowing optimism from the future. They assume future motivation will solve present resistance. Except reality behaves differently. The same mind that avoids action today usually arrives intact tomorrow. And when tomorrow fails to deliver the transformation that was expected, another psychological consequence begins to grow. The cost of delay. Most people measure procrastination in lost hours, but the deeper cost is emotional. A postponed task rarely disappears. It follows people silently. A report remains unfinished during dinner. An unanswered email lingers during a conversation. An important decision waits in the background while someone tries to relax. The task may be absent physically. Psychologically, it remains active. This is why chronic procrastination often feels exhausting even when little work has been done. The mind continues carrying unresolved commitments. Every delay creates a small amount of mental tension. One delay becomes two become 10. Eventually, people are not managing tasks. They are managing accumulated guilt. Unfinished responsibilities occupy more mental space than completed ones. That sounds counterintuitive. After all, avoiding work should feel easier than doing it. But this creates another problem. The emotional weight of postponement grows larger than the task itself. A simple phone call becomes intimidating. A short project feels overwhelming. An ordinary conversation begins to feel threatening. Not because the activity changed, because avoidance added emotional interest to the original debt. And once that burden grows heavy enough, people often search for explanations. They tell themselves they need more motivation, more confidence, more preparation. But here's the strange part. Procrastination is frequently protecting something far deeper than comfort. Fear, not always obvious fear, not the dramatic kind, the hidden kind. The fear of failing, the fear of looking incompetent, the fear of being judged, the fear of discovering personal limitations, sometimes even the fear of succeeding and facing new expectations afterward. A person delays launching the project, not because they don't care, because they care deeply. A student postpones studying, not because the outcome is unimportant, because the outcome feels important enough to threaten self-worth. The task is rarely the threat. What the task might reveal is. That is why procrastination often targets meaningful goals rather than trivial ones. The greater the emotional significance, the greater the temptation to delay. Avoidance becomes protection, at least temporarily. But temporary protection has a habit of becoming permanent behavior. And this may be the most dangerous stage of all, because eventually people stop waiting for tomorrow. They start waiting for conditions, the right mood, the right opportunity, the right timing, the right level of confidence, the right version of themselves. Life slowly becomes a sequence of prerequisites, one condition after another, one future moment after another, one invisible starting line after another. And over time, waiting stops feeling like a decision. It becomes an identity, a lifestyle. A person waits to pursue the goal, then waits to change careers, then waits to have the difficult conversation, then waits to become who they intended to become. Years pass, not because action was impossible, because readiness became a moving target. The habit of waiting can quietly consume an entire lifetime. And perhaps the deepest irony is this. Most people believe they are waiting for certainty before they begin. But certainty is not what arrives. Time is. And while people are waiting for the perfect moment to start living, life continues moving forward without ever pausing long enough to provide one. Most people spend their lives trying to avoid pain. That seems reasonable. Pain feels like a warning sign, a signal that something is wrong, something to escape, something to minimize whenever possible. But this assumption hides one of the strangest truths in human behavior. Not all pain moves in the same direction. Some pain leads somewhere. Some pain follows you forever. And the difference between the two often determines the shape of an entire life. Think about the discomfort of learning a difficult skill, the awkwardness of speaking in public, the uncertainty of starting over, the embarrassment of making mistakes while everyone watches. In the moment, these experiences feel unpleasant. Naturally, people avoid them. But here's the strange part. The pain disappears. Growth eventually absorbs it. The discomfort that feels enormous today often becomes a story tomorrow. Now compare that to another kind of pain. The conversation never started, the opportunity never taken, the goal abandoned before the attempt. Years later, the memory remains surprisingly alive. The pain of growth is temporary. The pain of avoidance keeps renewing itself. This is why regret often feels heavier than failure. Failure hurts once. Regret keeps replaying. And once people begin recognizing this difference, another psychological shift becomes unavoidable. They start seeing failure differently. Most people fear failure because they imagine it as evidence. Evidence of weakness. Evidence of incompetence. Evidence that they were never capable in the first place. But failure behaves differently than most people assume, especially when it happens publicly. A public mistake feels terrifying because it threatens identity. Suddenly, the gap between how people want to be perceived and how they are actually performing becomes visible. Nobody enjoys that feeling, yet some of the fastest growth occurs precisely there. Why? Because private failure allows denial. Public failure removes it. The illusion collapses. Reality becomes impossible to ignore. The truth arrives faster when everyone can see it. Think about athletes reviewing mistakes on film. Entrepreneurs launching products that fail in front of customers. Performers forgetting lines in front of an audience. The experience is uncomfortable, sometimes deeply uncomfortable. But feedback becomes immediate, specific, unavoidable. And that accelerates learning. The ego may suffer. The skill improves. That sounds harsh, until you look closer. Because growth rarely comes from feeling impressive. It comes from confronting reality faster than everyone else. But this creates another question. Why do some people become stronger after setbacks while others become more fragile? The answer often has less to do with personality than people think. Consider physical training. Nobody expects strength to appear instantly. Muscles develop through repeated exposure to resistance, stress, recovery, adaptation. Then the cycle repeats. Mental resilience follows a surprisingly similar pattern. Yet many people expect confidence before challenge rather than because of challenge. They want certainty before action, strength before resistance, courage before fear. Except reality behaves differently. Resilience is not something people possess. It is something they build. One difficult conversation, One rejection, one setback, one recovery, then another. The mind becomes durable through use, not protection. This explains a fascinating paradox. People who have never struggled often feel less prepared for adversity than those who have faced repeated obstacles. Not because hardship is desirable, because adaptation requires exposure. A protected life can create a fragile psychology. A tested life often creates flexibility. And eventually that flexibility reveals one final insight. Recovery may be more important than success itself. Most people focus on outcomes, winning, achieving, avoiding mistakes. But high performers in every domain share a different advantage. They recover quickly. They do not spend months trapped inside a bad day. They do not turn one mistake into a permanent identity. They experience setbacks, but they return again and again. This ability appears ordinary from the outside, yet it changes everything. Because every life contains disappointment. Every career contains mistakes. Every relationship contains conflict. Every ambition encounters resistance. The difference is rarely who falls. The difference is who returns. Your future is shaped less by the setback than by the speed of your return. And perhaps that is the deepest misunderstanding of growth. People often imagine growth as a straight line upward, a sequence of improvements, achievements, and victories. But human development rarely looks like that. It looks more like disruption, adjustment, recovery, then expansion. Again and again. The individuals who grow the most are not the ones who avoid pain, avoid failure, or avoid setbacks. They are the ones who stop treating those experiences as interruptions to growth. Because eventually they discover something most people never fully understand. Growth was never hiding on the other side of pain. Growth was hidden inside the process of learning how to carry it. Perhaps the most important realization is this: the biggest forces shaping our lives are rarely the obvious ones. They are the invisible habits, assumptions, fears, distractions, and patterns operating quietly beneath awareness. The moment you begin noticing them, you begin reclaiming control. Thank you for spending this time with us on Relaxing Facts Studio. If you're not already subscribed, consider joining us for more deep explorations of human behavior and psychology. If this episode made you think differently, please like the video, share it on your social media pages, and help these ideas reach more people. Most importantly, leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your perspective and the insights you took away from this journey. Your support is what keeps this channel growing and allows us to continue creating thoughtful content like this. Until next time, stay curious,